Oh, and welcome to another Tech Articles. In today's article, I'm just going to take an overview video of some of the changes in Flowmattic version 5. And this is a big update to Flowmattic, a very, very big step into modernization of the interface and the way that Flowmattic works, and it brings it very much in line with its competitors. Um, if I'm honest, not that I actually believe that Flowmattic has competitors as such, because of the fact that it is self-hosted, installed, and there is no limitation on workflows. It's based on the size of your hardware. Basically, you can run as many flows as you want. You're not limited to what you can and can't do with Flowmattic, and that's why I think it stands above all of the rest. But it's introduced a lot of new features, a lot of modernization, and the biggest one is probably around the UI. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through this blog post and discuss some of the items on here. Some of them I'm going to skip, and I'll explain those as I come to them. And we will move between this blog post and my Flowmattic instance that I've got installed here, and we'll go through some workflows. And although I'm not going to show you do anything actually working, it might give you a better idea of some of the new features, how they work, and yeah, in general, the changes to Flowmattic 5. And as I've come over to this site already, I'm going into the dashboard. The first thing I'm going to say is the new UI. You can see a new dashboard here. It is yeah, it's a very nice looking dashboard. It's got more data on it. You've got your tables. Tables is a new feature. Tables is one of those features I'm actually going to skip today. I will go through it. We will talk about tables, but in terms of use cases and solutions, I'm actually going to produce a dedicated video, and it's one I'm not going to plan myself. What I'm going to do is I'm going to keep an eye on the forum for the next few weeks, on the Facebook group, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to probably pick one of the questions that somebody asks and run through that as a good example, because then I'm helping somebody with what they want to do, but I'm also using a real world example that somebody wants to do, rather than trying to fabricate an example. Because at this point in time, I don't have any use case that I want to use tables for. So I thought the best way of doing that would be to pick somebody else's and show them how I would do it. But yeah, I like this new UI. As I say, this is a big step towards modernization of Flowmattic, and making it look more like what people expect when they look at an automation tool. So we head over to the blog post, and the first item, and probably the biggest probably the biggest for most people. I think tables is probably the biggest. It's a very it has lots of use cases, lots of usefulness, but it's just finding one that really showcases its ability, and that's why I'm going to see what other people are start asking and start working with tables to see about making a dedicated video for that. But the visual workflow, and this is not going to be new to anybody. This, if you've used Appier or Shore Triggers or any of the other automation tools, you're going to be used to a visual workflow, and we now have one in Flowmattic, and it works exactly as you'd expect it would. It's linear. You can really see, and where I think it comes into its own is here with routers, and that's why I've done an example here with a trigger and a router and our different routes. And one of the things that have been introduced as well is skip, and you'll see this one here. This one here with the yellow outline around it is actually a skipped step. Good use case here would be if I didn't want to send out this link because I knew the data wasn't going to be here in testing, and it took a lot of time. Is another reason you might put delays in your flows, and you might want to be able to turn them on and off because or skip them when you're testing. So you don't want to spend 15 minutes, half an hour waiting for something for the delay to tick over. You can skip it, and it's really easy to change that. If we open this up, and you'll see here it's a very nice modern interface, and you can set your stuff up, and all you need to do is this checkbox here and save and continue, and we're no longer skipping that step. And if we want to skip it again, we open it back up, push the conditions. Now I find that the first one doesn't always take. You can see it's going to take this time, and now it's the skip step. So if you're having trouble trying to skip, I think sometimes you have to double click on off on is somehow registers that click. I have just seen actually in a post when I was writing these notes, and I've just seen somebody else has put something similar. So I believe they'll be looking at it. It's obviously a bug in the integration, but yeah, it's easy enough to once you understand. It's like all of these things. Once you understand them, they're easy to do, but you do have to do a double click on that. But this is now a skip step. But visually, you can see that it's a skip step, which you couldn't have done in the more traditional workflow builder. So I think that's really useful, and it's nice to be able to get a router and actually see the individual routes. And I think that's a big advantage to the new visual builder, and it looks good. It really helps as well as in terms of renaming stuff as well. With this, you can see stuff a little easier when you've done it. So yeah, I like I do very much like the new interface in terms of the visual builder, and it is the headline item here about what you can do, and it's it's going to be very very popular. As I say, it brings Flowmattic in line with some of its nearest competitors, and we've just done routers, so I use that as part of my visual workflow example because I think it's a really good example of why visual workflows work. Routers are great. I mean, they've done some improvements to the routers here. They give a good example here actually about what to do in different circumstances. And I'm going to talk about one of the items on here now that I haven't seen mentioned. I can't see it mentioned in this flow, but there's a couple of additional tools. One is mentioned down here, I believe it is. Magic Link is mentioned in Flowmattic tools, but there are a couple of other Flowmattic tools that I think with the visual builder are really quite useful. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to head over to my instance and I'm going to go down here and do this one here. And what this is basically a webhook, and this turns on a workflow ID, which is a new Flowmattic tool. Well, I say new, a Flowmattic tool event, and you configure it, and it will then activate. And in this case, it turns on. And there are three options in this work group, and that is turn on, turn off, get status. So you can do a full route here. All of the options are here. But where I think this is useful, and the visual builder really helps with that, is you see I've got a post here that is off currently, given the toggle here. And this workflow is on and working. And what this does is a webhook receives some data, and that trigger of that webhook then turns that post on. And I'm just going to trigger that webhook, which is here, and I'm just going to trigger it by doing that. And that workflow is now triggered. So if we were to go to history, you'll see that there is now a trigger here. This is the time I'm recording this video, and you'll see that it's successfully turned on that workflow. So if we go back to workflows, you'll see it's now on. And if we turn it off and I do it again, and then I'll just refresh the page, you'll see again that it is now turned on. Now, on the base of this doesn't seem like a really useful feature, but if you're an agency or you're offering workflows as a service, and I will do a video on this, it's one of the videos I've decided to create, and I don't know when these are all going to come out, but I have a list of about 5 or 6 videos that I want to do, and I've actually started planning the first one, which is for another one of the new Flowmattic tools, and I will probably do that one first. But I also want to do one on this, and what it could be, and one of the things that originally come to my mind, if you run an agency of any description, it doesn't have to be necessarily a web agency. It could be a marketing agency, something where you're providing Flowmattic workflows as part of that tool. And let's say it's a subscription-based product. On subscription cancellation, you could turn off those workflows. And to me, that's really useful. And adding routers and stuff with the new visual builder, it would be really quite a brilliant new way of working. So I've been playing with this on and off status this morning for quite a bit to try and better understand how that would work and what I can use it for. And the other one I was talking about, Magic Link. Now, the magic links aren't new; they've been around for a long time, but they are new to Flowmattic, and it generates magic links that automatically expire after a year, after a single use, and after an hour, not a year. Um, and there's a couple of notes here about how it's an enhanced user experience, is good for security and a good login process. Now, and there's an example usage here. But what I've done, and I'll do a video on this later, is I've actually replaced the login form here with a short form that people just put their email in, and what it does is it generates a magic link and it emails that magic link to them. And I will go through all this workflow later and how to do this in a separate video. But I'm just going to open it up now and go to the very end and talk about one of the things that I think is missing in version 5. And I have posted this on the Facebook group, and hopefully we can see some sort of change to this. But if I go to configure down here in the email body, we seem to have been missing a option to add in variables. So I've had to manually add this variable in, and I couldn't find a way to add a variable into my email body anymore directly, which is problematic. I feel for building out your email bodies. So I have suggested that maybe we need to have one added in there. But I will go through this workflow later in a separate video. I'll try and get it up shortly after this video that on the new features of version 5. So I'm going to go back to this blog post now, and I'm going to scroll up and talk about this one. Now, this one I haven't got anything prepared for because I don't actually have an example for webhook response times where it's an issue. But the way it worked before is you didn't send a response to your original webhook trigger until you'd finish your workflow. So if your workflow was large, or in the case of some of mine, had very long delays in them, they never sent a response. And for some applications that expect an immediate response, that is problematic. So, as it says here, instant responses are now available, and this opens up more applications and more programs and SaaS to work with Flowmattic and work with it well. And I think this is an important step. It's brilliant to see that it's been taken in, and that's great. And again, it's a real quality of life increasing item. I'm not going to go over new SMTP details, but it has better details now within Flowmattic for SMTP. I prefer to use an external plugin for SMTP, have one set of details for both the WordPress installation and Flowmattic, but there might be times when you want to have separate, and these new features allow you to do that. You've got skip execution here, which we just did up in our Webflow builder. Again, I think this is a really good step. The example use case here is delays, and I think delays is probably one of the places where it's most useful. And I think one of the places I will use it the most is when I'm building very long workflows. Sometimes I hit API limits. And the reason for that is because as you're building a workflow out and you're testing the different steps of it, you might have to run it several times. And I say several times. Some of my workflows have had to run hundreds of times to try and understand where it's going wrong and what I need to adjust and get it to that point of perfection. But I could then start skipping earlier steps that aren't needed, and not using those API limits and not hitting those API limits. For example, I could even add in variables within the workflow to cover some of those earlier steps until I've got them right and I've got the responses I need to, and then I can finish building out my workflow. So again, I think this is a really important quality of life item. The next one I want to talk about is tables. And as I say, I'm not actually going to cover tables at all in detail today. I'm just going to talk about tables. I think visual data management in tables is really good. I think how quickly it was integrated. It was an idea, and it was added to version 5 really quickly, really well as well. I mean, they Natin and the team really obviously had a really good idea of how this should be integrated, and they've delivered, and they've got some examples here, and some data about how this would work. And it works with external databases as well as internal databases, which is brilliant. And what I'm going to do with this one is I will create a video on it eventually, but as I say, I'm going to look on the Facebook group, and I'm going to wait until somebody starts asking some questions or suggesting some ideas about how they're going to use tables, and I'll pick one of those, and I'll probably run a tutorial through it, this is what I would do in this situation, and this is how I would do it, because I want a really good example rather than just showing you it in a relatively weak way. And the other one that I'm not going to at this point go into too many details of, but there's the AI assistants, and I probably will again for this one build something out, but I just need an idea that is not only useful but isn't too niche to not have use for wider people. And maybe I'll try and look at doing one with regards to something that is more universal than a particular use case. But yeah, it's a really useful feature to add. It's a very generous feature to add, as it says here, unlimited AI assistance. This is all run off your own AI models and your own keys and your own data. And I think again, I think in the example given here, this would be useful for agencies and etc. that are doing things for clients. Interestingly, I haven't looked yet, and it's one of the things I will look. I don't know whether you can turn these on and off in the same way as you can workflows, and if you can, that would be even better. And I will. It's one of the things I will look at to try and do. But yeah, this is a general over. This has been a general overview, really, of Flowmattic 5, and there's there's a lot in this in terms of actions, in terms of what you can do, and even improvements for quality of life improvements, etc. There are lots and lots in here, but it's a big old update. It is a really big update, and yeah, I think congratulations to the team in terms of both visually and modernizationally how this is really good for Flowmattic and Flowmatic's users, but also in terms of the additional functionality they've added. And I think that's, to me, is what is so important about Flowmattic. They continue to innovate, they continue to push to give you as much as they can in their primary package. And I've got lots of new ideas about what I can do, and what I can build using Flowmattic. And as odd as that is, one of the most the biggest for me is this action here. And once I understand how it works and how it's supposed to work, I will release a video on it, because I think for me this removes the need to add in webhooks or custom do actions into my code to trigger things. And actually, once you start triggering items, you can then pass them off and over to different flows. And that's going to be useful, which means moving data between different workflows is now going to be so much easier, because you could run a workflow, feed that data into a custom PHP snippet, and use that PHP snippet to then trigger the next flow in that workflow, which means your very large workflows now can be over several different workflows, and that means they become reusable elements. So if, for example, and this is just an example, if we go back to the one I've got here with regards to the magic link, if we remove the shore forms that I'm using here, and we had a workflow that would take the data and produce the magic link for logging in, we could have that as a single dedicated workflow to just do that magic link bit. It's all send the email and anything else that it does. But we could use that with 50 different workflows if we wanted. So it means you only have to design it once. It's how it works. As long as the data coming in is always consistent and it's always the same variable and it's always the same name, then actually that becomes really useful. And I think the same with regards to the visualization of this. And I've done a video previously about how I use web forms on static sites using Email It. And one of the ways I do that is using a router. So depending on what the details that are coming in, depends on what route it takes. And that was fine with when there was like say 7 or 8 routes. I mean, it was still relatively tough to work out where I was in the flow. But with this now visually, I can have those routes. I can zoom out and see them on the screen, and as I go along, and I'll be able to see those routes, and I can then just duplicate one like I've done there, modify where it goes to, and that's it. I've now added a new web form to my route, and you can see how that visually adds and works. So yeah, I think this is a really good update. It's really good from a quality of life perspective as well as a functionality perspective. And again, I'm really excited to see what Natin and the team come up with as they continue to develop Flowmattic. I know that it has been said on the Facebook group that they're going to concentrate on getting some more integrations now. I would very much like to see integrations with some more premium tools such as Grid Pane, Server Avatar, Sure Feedback. In fact, I've got an interesting video that I want to do on Sure Feedback and Flowmattic, and that has just reminded me. And for those that don't know, Sure Feedback is what used to be called Project Huddle. I brought it as Project Huddle. So, yeah, and I know I think this is exciting. I think I'm really interested to see what the community starts to build with some of these and some of the questions that come out. And I look forward to being able to produce some new videos on some of those solutions for you. Thanks for watching. If you'd like to see more videos on Flowmattic 5 and Flowmattic in general, WordPress, automation, forms, shortcut, short forms, please like and subscribe to the channel. Like this video. If there's something you want to see in a future video, please do reach out and let me know. And yeah, thanks for watching.